Today is January the 29th. Today, we see the Samaritan woman at the well. Jesus has been visiting Jerusalem again. He decides to return to Judea, but he goes through Samaria, and there he has a very interesting encounter with a woman at Jacob's well. Let's read about that encounter. John chapter 4, verses 1 to 26. Now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard Jesus is making and baptizing more disciples than John, although it wasn't Jesus himself, but his disciples who baptized, he left Judea and started back to Galilee. But he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" Jews don't share things in common with the Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that's saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have no bucket and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well and with his sons and his flocks drank from it?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I'll give will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come back." The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You're right in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you've had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you've said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I see that you're a prophet. So our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you say that the place where people must worship is in Jerusalem." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship the Father, neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you don't know. We worship what we know, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour is coming, and it's now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father seeks such as these to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, who's called Christ. When he comes, he'll proclaim all things to us." Jesus said to her, "I am he, the one who is speaking to you." Beautiful passage that we learn a lot from. We learn how to evangelize. We learn a lot about what the gospel is. But I wanted to focus on the question kind of behind this passage. Who are the Samaritans? And why do the Jews of the first century hate the Samaritans? Well, the Jewish understanding of who the Samaritans were is that they were a mix of Israelites left over after the 12 tribes, the northern tribes, were taken into exile. Some remained behind and intermarried with those who lived, the inhabitants of that region. Now, this understanding we capture in books like Nehemiah. Let's just read 2 chapters from Nehemiah and see a little bit about a man named Sanballat, who was a Samaritan, and what he did when the tribe of Judah returned from the Babylonian exile.
Nehemiah 4 and 6, New Revised Standard Version, Nehemiah 4. Now, when Sanballat heard they were building the wall, he was angry and greatly enraged, and he mocked the Jews. He said, in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they restore it by themselves? Will they offer sacrifice? Will they finish it in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish, burn ones at that?" Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him, and he said, "That stone wall they are building, any fox going up on it will break it down. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn their taunt back on their own heads, and give them over as plunder in the land of captivity. Do not cover their guilt, and do not let their sin be blotted out from your sight, for they have raged against the builders. So we rebuilt the wall, and all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the repairing of the walls of Jerusalem was going forward and the gaps were beginning to be closed, they were very angry, and all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion on it. So we prayed to our God and set a guard as a protection against them day and night. But Judah said, "The strength of the burden bearers is failing, and there is too much rubbish so that we are unable to work on the wall." And our enemies said, "They will not know or see anything before we come upon them and kill them and stop the work." When the Jews who lived near them came, they said to us 10 times, "From all the places where they lived, they will come up against us." So, in the lowest parts of the space behind the wall, in the open places, I stationed people according to their families, with their swords, their spears, and their bows. After I looked these things over, I stood up and said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, "Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your kin, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your households." When our enemies heard that their plot was known to us, and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to his work. From that day on, half of my servants worked on construction, and half held the spears, shields, bows, and body armor, and the leaders posted themselves behind the whole house of Judah, who were building the wall. The burden bearers carried their loads in such a way that each labored on the work with one hand and with the other held a weapon, and each of the builders had his sword strapped at his side while he built. The man who sounded the trumpet was beside me, and I said to the nobles, officials, and the rest of the people, "The work is great and widely spread out, and we are separated far from one another on the wall. Rally to us whenever you hear the sound of the trumpet. Our God will fight for us." So we labored at the work, and half of them held the spears from the break of dawn until the stars came out. I also said to the people at that time, "Let every man and his servant pass the night in Jerusalem, so that they may be a guard for us by night and may labor by day." So neither I nor my brothers, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me ever took off their clothes. Each kept his weapon in his right hand. Nehemiah 6. Now when it was reported to Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arab and to the rest of our enemies that I had built the wall and that there was no gap left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors in the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, "Come, let us meet together in one of the valleys in the plain of Ono." But they intended to do me harm. So I sent messengers to them, saying, "I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave it to come down to you?" They sent to me 4 times in this way, and I answered them in the same manner. In the same way Sanballat for the 5th time sent a servant to me with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, "It is reported among the nations," and Geshem also says it, "that you and the Jews intend to rebel. That is why you are rebuilding the wall, and according to this report you wish to become their king. You have also set up prophets to proclaim in Jerusalem concerning you, 'There is a king in Judah,' and now it will be reported to the king according to these words. So come, therefore, and let us confer together." Then I sent to him, saying, "No such things as you say have been done. You are inventing them out of your own mind." For they all wanted to frighten us, thinking, "Their hands will drop from the work, and it will not be done." But now strengthen my hands. One day when I went into the house of Shemaiah, son of Delaiah, son of Mehetabel, who was confined to his house, he said, "Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, tonight they are coming to kill you." But I said, "Should a man like me run away? Would a man like me go into the temple and save his life? I will not go in." Then I perceived and saw that God had not sent him at all, but he had pronounced the prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He was hired for this purpose, to intimidate me and make me sin by acting in this way, and so they could give me a bad name, in order to taunt me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, O my God, according to these things that they did, and also Noadiah the prophetess and the rest of the prophets who wanted to make me afraid. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month of Elul in 52 days. And when all our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly in their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God. Moreover, in those days the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and Tobiah's letters came to them. For many in Judah were bound by oath to him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah son of Erah, and his son Jehohanan had married the daughter of Meshullam son of Berechiah. Also they spoke of his good deeds in my presence, and reported my words to him, and Tobiah sent letters to intimidate me.
So here in Nehemiah 4, and again in Nehemiah 6, we have the traditional understanding, which is probably pretty accurate, that the Samaritans were a mixed race left behind. They opposed the Jews rebuilding the temple and the city of Jerusalem. And because of that, from the time the Jews returned from the Babylonian exile, they hated the Samaritans. So what did the Samaritans say about themselves? The Samaritans said about themselves that they were not a mixed race. They were descended from the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. Yes, they did not go along with the other 10 tribes to wherever Assyria took them when the 10 tribes were exiled. They stayed in the region. They say that they had a legitimate son of Aaron to be their priest. They also say that they kind of rewrote the Torah. They say their Torah is the original. And according to that Torah, we are to build a temple and worship on Mount Gerizim. That was the mountain where blessings were pronounced over Israel. Now, this is why the woman at the well brings up the issue of worship and worshiping on this mountain. Well, in John chapter 4, Jesus lays all of that history aside. Whether we follow the history that Nehemiah presents or the history that the Samaritans presented about their own origin, Jesus basically said none of that matters. What matters is that you understand who the Messiah is and follow him. So what do we do today? Well, look in your own life. Are there marginalized people within your sphere of influence? People that you know that are just kind of pushed aside. Look for an opportunity to reach out to them today. Scripture reading from the New Revised Standard Version by Emily Herrera. Like what you hear? Please subscribe on whatever platform you use to listen to this podcast.